The talk is really unfolding already through the music and the sharing and the prayers. When we are grateful, and when you think about being grateful, what happens? Isn't there a turning in? Isn't there simply a relaxing, a becoming more present? Isn't there more of a settling in? I got a fortune cookie one time, and I've kept it all these years. This fortune cookie says, if you're not grateful for what you have, how can having more make you happier? So this whole talk is going to be revolving around the shift. And I'm going to call it a shift because it's a giant, it's more like an earthquake. And the shift is really when we start, actually, when we recognize that it's more important to cherish and to be available to what I have rather than wanting more. It's to be peaceful and content with what I have. It's noticing what I already have as opposed to what I'm always reaching for. And that's a real tricky one. That's the shift. That's the big spiritual shift that we're all looking for, is when I am okay with what I have. I've arrived. I thought I still needed more improvement, more this, more that, to make me happy, to make me more fulfilled so I could have more love in my life. But maybe I've already arrived and I don't recognize it. When something happens in the space of gratitude, that's when the recognition happens. And I asked my wife, Susan, yesterday, I said, working on this talk, going, oh, what am I going to say? And she said, and I said, tell me a story about gratitude. And she said, oh, that's easy. It happened this afternoon when you were out riding a bicycle. And she said, I was up in bed reading, and the warmth of the sun coming in. It was a wonderful afternoon. And I looked down, and there are the three cats all in a row, just sleeping away, the big one with on its back with the paws in the air. It's just so cute. And it's like my heart quickened. And I couldn't call it gratitude because it doesn't have a name. And I'd say, well, what would you call it? And I'd say warm and fuzzy. So in that moment, we can label it. We can label it gratitude. Her heart was open. There was a quiet in the room, and there was a recognition of the perfect moment. I know. But when you think about it, does it even need to be labeled? Does it need to be named? Because we recognize it. There's something that quickens. There's something that's so soft and fuzzy. And we all recognize it. And then the mind comes in and says, oh, well, I'm grateful for this and I'm grateful for that. And that's great, because now we can name it and we can return and we can reference it. And this is what Howard Thurman would call keeping fresh before us our moments of high resolve, those moments that touched us so deeply. Gratitude are those moments when we recognize the perfection that is already here. Now, there's that Kenny Rogers song about the gambler, knowing when to hold them and when to fold them and when to get the hell out of Dodge. But he also said, every hand's a winner and every hand's a loser. And that's profound, because we're dealt a deck of cards when we come in with all of our blessings, all of our, what others would call curses, or we might even call curses. But all of those cards can be played to perfection if we learn the skillful ways of doing that. One of the unskillful ways would be to criticize the cards that you're given. It's not helpful. It doesn't work. These are the cards you've got. You have now. Perhaps we could cherish those cards. We could become friendly with those cards, and we could play them in a really powerful, skillful way. That's the shift. When we stop criticizing our cards and we start playing them in a skillful way. And we're all capable of doing that. The thing about gratitude, it's not something that we think, it's something that we feel. Gratitude is it's an upwelling, it's a feeling. If we think about it, we can tend to we're focused somewhere else. Think about taking a nice piece of chocolate, your favorite piece of chocolate, and you pop it in your mouth, and you let it start to kind of melt a little bit. You taste it as it melts more, and then you move it around in your mouth, and it's feeling, this is good. You're not thinking about it. I'm going to move my tongue this way or that. Oh, this is a good chocolate. No, it's like there's a focus in on the sensations in the mouth. You're present to chocolate. Nothing needs to be added. And so when we're experiencing gratitude, can we savor those moments? Can we simply just be engaged in those moments like we would be with chocolate or something that tasty? And if you think about gratitude, if you can't come up with 1,000 things that we're grateful for, you're not being very creative, because there is so much. Friday night, Susan had a party, and we have a friend who's blind. And every time I see him, I am amazed at how generous he is, and how self-sufficient he is, and how gracious. It's like, and I go, how does he do it? How does he navigate? He travels blind. So I asked him about gratitude, and he said, I'm grateful I can walk. I can get around, I can go outside, I can smell. Never once mentioned the card he was dealt, which was blindness. Never mentioned it. It's irrelevant. So what? He's embraced all of it. Wow. So Marshall Rosenberg, the founder of Nonviolent Communication, was asked to present at a conference, 3-day conference for the Quakers on nonviolent anti-war protesting. And they could really come up with something. And so they started out, and Marshall's doing his pitch. And 2 hours into it, little bell, bing, and the chairs like this all got in a circle. And they had a gratitude circle for about 15 minutes. Each person shared what they were grateful for that day. 2 hours later, ding, Marshall's getting pissed. This is interfering with my program. He's not getting it. At the end of the 3 days, they went out for a dinner. And the leader of the Quakers said, well, what did you think of our group? And he said, well, at first, I thought you guys were weird with all this gratitude stuff. It was just way too much. And then I started to see how it actually works, that you guys got present to what your purpose was every 2 hours. You got to see, what am I here for? What is my heart's calling? And I don't want to become like my opponents. I want to remain open. And so Marshall was saying, I'm going to add this to my programs. I think this is really, really powerful. It was so subtle because when we speak what we're grateful for, you have to feel it in a sense. I mean, you can mouth the words, but if you really think about it, it's like, there it is, that feeling that quiets the mind, that brings us in touch with the divinity that is always here, that is perhaps not recognized. So there was this, my friend Jim lives up in Mount Shasta and off the grid, so he has to burn wood. And he's getting to the point where going out and falling a tree and chopping it up is a little much right now. So he has it delivered by a guy named Larry. And Larry is a scruffy old guy with the old pickup truck, and he's been doing it for years, and he's gruff. And Larry shows up and says, Jim, it's going to cost you more this year. I got expenses. And Jim said, well, it's always been, nope, it's going up this year. Sorry, but that's the way it goes. I'll have my nephew, he'll load it up for you. Well, Jim this is not feeling good for Jim. But he says, okay. And so he notices that the nephew, first off, goes in and sweeps the area where the wood's going to go. And it's clean. And then he takes and puts the wood down with precision. And this gets Jim's attention. And he walks over to the nephew and says to the nephew, he said, do you like working for Larry? He said, oh, yeah. Yeah. I'm so grateful to Larry. He took me in when my parents died last year. He's been really, really good to me. In fact, we're going to use the money from this load of wood, and he's going to take me to the store, and he's going to buy me school clothes. You feel that. You feel that when people talk about gratitude, it permeates, it touches every one of us. It's a tsunami of, call it love. And we recognize it. And we can share it again and again when we open and just be vulnerable in that way, which isn't tough. Well, it changed Jim. Jim saw Larry in a completely different way and was pleased to give him the money. In fact, gave him a tip. So there you go. So I want to say about gratitude and what the grace of gratitude is. Gratitude brings us to that place where we can shift again and again. And it's like learning to drive a car on the road. Call it the Navajo Road of the Beauty Way. And when you first started learning to drive, I know I was sort of white knuckling going at 60 miles an hour because the car would want to veer this way or want to veer that way. And to keep it really on the road, I had to pay attention. Now, after a while, it becomes automatic driving. But for those first, I don't know how many years, you need to pay attention. Driving the road to gratitude, we need to pay attention. Because if not, our mind will drift, the car or our mind will drift over into negativity. It will drift to the side of the road. It will drift into the weeds, the bushes, the sand will get stuck over there, and we're off the road. So the idea of paying attention and focusing, because what we focus on is our prayer. What we focus on brings us to a recognition that there's something there that's important to us. So whenever we focus in on it, something, There's an energetic that goes on. There's a calling that goes on. There's a communication with going on. But how often do we really focus? We look, we're interested, but when there's a focus, when there's a strong focus, you can feel it. And so if this talk is about nothing else, it's about that feeling of focusing, of savoring, of being in the body in such a way that it moves us. So when we practice gratitude, when we stay on the road of gratitude, remembering to focus on that, staying in our lane, the lane of gratitude, that over time shifts us. And it shifts us to what we have as opposed to what we don't have. And that's the real grace. That's the grace of gratitude, is that it causes a shift within us. And so I'm going to close with this quote from Bhagwan Sri Rajneesh, that rascal. And he says, be grateful to all who have helped, to all who have hindered you, and to those who have been indifferent to you. Be grateful to all, because altogether they have created the context in which Buddhas are born, in which you can realize your Buddha nature. It's all of the cards that were dealt. It's all of the pieces of life. Can we be grateful for the whole show just as it is? That's the grace of gratitude. Let us pray. And taking in a breath and opening the heart to receive that breath, simply to breathe through the heart. The warm fuzziness of the heart, the gratitude that exists always there within the heart. And so I speak a word declaring that each of us have become more aware of the importance of cultivating this warm, fuzzy heart. And we vow to increase our kindness and to appreciate what is given and to focus on our blessings, what has already been given. And we fully accept that full blossoming and realization of the heart's wisdom as it plays and dances in this mystery. For this, we are so grateful. As I release this prayer by saying, and so it is. Amen.